My name is Brittany Saylor, and I'm here this evening to remember my Aunt Joanne O'Brien. I spoke in remembrance of her at this event 2 years ago, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to come back and remember her again tonight. When I heard that this year's theme was to emphasize the importance of supporting victims, I decided to not only focus on my aunt's story, but some of my family as well. When it comes to losing someone due to homicide, as in our situation, the victims are those that are left to cope with a profound loss, though I prefer to use the term survivors. Joanne O'Brien was born on January 27, 1957, and was one of 4 children born to my grandmother, Joan Peterson. My grandmother is an incredible woman who did her best to protect and raise her children. As a new mother myself, I can't imagine the loss that my grandma felt on that day and has continued to feel every day since. Though she does not vocalize her pain, you can sense the void that she feels, especially during special events or family moments. No amount of time will ever make that pain go away. My aunt was exactly 3 years and 3 days older than my mother, Karen Saylor. My mom and my aunt were best friends, and they had so many dreams that they couldn't wait to experience together, such as sharing in the joy of their children's weddings and becoming grandparents. Today, my aunt would have been a grandmother to 2 beautiful grandchildren. This year has been especially hard on my mother, as her first grandchild, my daughter, was just born in February, and her first grandson is due this coming September. It's milestones like these that they should have been sharing together, but my mom has been robbed of these moments due to the selfish actions of another person. Though my mom has many close friends and other family members to share in these moments with, they could never replace a sister, as their bond is irreplaceable. 2 years ago, I spoke of the void that I felt not having my aunt present at my wedding, and this year, the void was intensified with the birth of my first child, a daughter. My aunt had one child, a son, and she always told me that I was the daughter she never had. She was a second mother to me, and becoming a new mom has recently brought up a whole slew of new emotions. My aunt would have been thrilled to meet my daughter, and I know that she would have spoiled her with so much love. I'm grieving the fact that my daughter is missing out on those moments. However, witnessing the bond that my daughter is creating with my sister brings so much joy to my heart, knowing that my daughter will get to experience the same bond with her aunt as I had with mine. And this brings me to the last person that I'd like to mention tonight, and that was my sister, Chelsea Conklin. For Chelsea, 2020 was personally the most difficult year of her life, as she was diagnosed with cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, at the age of 28. My aunt was also a cancer survivor, having battled and beat breast cancer. My sister truly defined the term warrior, and is thankfully now almost 9 months in remission, though I know that she wished she could have had my aunt by her side through her journey. No one else in our family had been in her shoes, and had my aunt still been alive, she would have been a key support for my sister. During my aunt's fight, she always remained positive and spoke of how she was going to beat it and go on to live her life. My sister reminded us all so much of my aunt during her battle, as she exhibited the same courage and strength that my aunt did, and I know that my aunt was with her somehow. Chelsea is now pregnant and will be having a baby boy in September, right around the date that my aunt was taken from us. This child will be a blessing to our family, giving us joy during a week that normally brings us so much pain and heartache. When speaking about today's emotions surrounding the loss of my aunt, you may think that she was just taken from us recently, but this September will mark 16 years without her. When you lose someone to violence, the typical stages of grief no longer exist. Loss is hard regardless, but when violence is involved, it changes everything. I know I only spoke of a few family members, but everyone in my family has handled her loss differently. From the start, some of us shut down. Some of us wanted answers to everything. Some of us couldn't even say her name, and some of us wanted to talk about her constantly. Some of us grew closer, and some of us grew apart. Today, we all have different residual effects from her loss. For those who don't understand what it's like to lose someone to violence, you may hear that it's been 16 years and not understand why something like a violent movie or as innocent as a song or memory can still bring you to tears. And I'm sure those of you here who have unfortunately experienced a similar loss can understand. For those who don't know my aunt's story and how it ends, I'll tell it to you briefly. She was the vice president of a cosmetic factory in New Windsor, New York, and was shot on September 26, 2005, by a disgruntled employee. She held on for 4 long days in the ICU and passed away surrounded by family on September 30th, 2005. Her killer was a level 3 sex offender who was caught doing inappropriate things at work, was reported to the police, and fired by my aunt. As a result, he was put on 10 years probation, and this made my aunt one of his targets. Prior to her murder, he had threatened my aunt, which caused her company to increase security for 18 months. After some time, they felt that the threat had died down and they lessened security. On the evening of Friday, September 23rd, 2005, he was found in 3 counts of violation of his probation. He was told by his probation officer that he would have to appear in court on Monday and would possibly be put in jail. He was left at his home and had the weekend to stew and plan his attack. Instead of showing up in court on Monday, he showed up at my aunt's office. On Monday, September 26, 2005, he walked through the company doors and he shot my aunt, 2 other employees, and then shot himself. The other 2 that were luckily shot somehow survived. Unfortunately, my aunt did not. In the state of New York, there is not a law in place that requires those who reported someone, resulting in them being put on probation, to be notified of violations. So no phone call was placed to my aunt to make her aware that he violated his probation. I'm not saying that a phone call would have prevented my aunt's murder, but I do believe that if she was notified, it would have most likely been considered a potential threat, and her company could have increased security again. For 12 years, my mom has fought tirelessly to try to get a law passed and make it mandatory that this notification take place, and the revision to the law would be titled Joanne's Law in my aunt's memory. Sadly, it still has not been put in place. The emotions and energy that have been dedicated to this law have worn my mom thin, and it's gotten hard to keep fighting, but we are hopeful that this could one day become a reality and potentially help save someone else. If there's anyone here tonight who could help us resume this fight, please come talk to us after. We are more than willing to resume the fight. This revision to the law would give us a small piece of closure in thinking that something good could come from her tragedy. Speaking of something good happening, when my aunt was in the hospital, the doctors kept telling us that had they been there the moment my aunt was shot, they would not have been able to save her due to the extent of her injuries. They also told us that they believed that she did not suffer at the time of the attack, and this was something that we always struggled to believe. However, after this event 2 years ago, my family was approached by the police officer who was the first person to find my aunt in her office that day. Prior to that moment, we had never met him. He verified that she was not conscious when he found her and that she was not suffering. To that police officer, and I apologize that I don't recall your name, if you're here tonight, please come find me after this, as I would like to personally thank you again for the small piece of closure that you were able to provide my family. In closing, I would like to tie us back to the theme of this event and end with these thoughts. For those of you here that work in a job that supports victims of crime, I encourage you to not forget the network that surrounds the primary victim, as they are victims as well. Those survivors have had the unthinkable happen to their loved one, and they need all of the support that they can get. In most cases, those survivors have very little knowledge of how the criminal justice system works. They're going to be thrown into a tornado of meetings, court appearances, depositions, etc., and they're not going to know what to do, who to talk to, or where to go next. Please be patient with them. Please keep in mind that they are secondary victims, and in addition to being thrust into the criminal justice process, they are grieving. Compassion will go a long way. And for those of you here who are survivors, if you have it in you to share your experience and help others that are facing a similar tragedy, I encourage you to reach out to your local victim service organizations and see how you can help. For the last 12 years, I've been on the board of directors of an organization in Connecticut known as Survivors of Homicide. Doing this in my aunt's memory has helped me turn my experience of her loss into something positive. To the organizers of this event, thank you again for everything you do and for the opportunity to remember my Aunt Joanne O'Brien. It means a lot to my family and I. Thank you.